We can have that as a ringtone for sure. You go, girl. Oh, it's Todd calling.
Are we ready?
Sorry, Mark.
Today is July 22nd, 2026, and we are talking about communication sites in Microsoft 365. Gang is all here, I think, unless I forgot something. Today we're going to cover communication sites. So the communication landscape, like what's in the communicator's toolbox, alongside with Teams, Viva Engage, and more. We're also going to dig into then communication sites, how Sympraxis team sort of thinks about them, how to manage them, how to design them, how to keep the content up to date, and then just communicating across your organization. So that's the full landscape of what we're going to talk about today. And to get us started, to kick us off, probably one of the cleanest slides I think I've seen from you, Mr. Cashman. This is. Wow.
I was expecting this one to get a little bit of action from others, like, oh man, this is too simple, or it's boring,
I just
or
I threw up my hands about my slide, Mark, because I saw this and it's like, oh,
whoa. Well, we are just going to treat it as a landscape architecture, and we're going to layer on that there are stories to tell throughout the intranet. And when you have a story to tell, this is a very product-oriented view of how you tell the story and how you communicate with your internal comms, whether it's low-level, peer-to-peer, or out to your team, or of course, what we're really going to be talking about today is that broader one-to-many type messaging that doesn't always have to come from a central body, but think of these things as managed conversations to everybody with a point of view and an intent, and of course, a lot of work behind it. But as you go from the bottom up, you really are thinking about dispersion of your communicative message, and that there are a lot of products and tools. We're centering on the communication site because that's a big part of what we're going to be not only talking about, but it's a really center of gravity of where your messages come from, where you post your news, where you put your most pertinent information for everybody. And we're going to talk about it throughout the session, so we get to the granular parts and pieces and the differentiators, and then sort of end cap with what that means from a where do you put it and where do you expect people to go. But if you take news as one example, you have a story to tell. Say maybe you want to disseminate the fact that you want to get the information that we're out of forks out to the rest of the intranet, so that the rest of the intranet can go and put the forks back into the right drawer. You would start with a nice
content
story.
Type, right? Content type.
You would create a fork content type, and you would then fork it across multiple communication channels. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to apologize to Carol and hope that those forks have been returned. But anyway, you have news to tell, and if you're going to tell it, you're probably going to put it into a communication site and then expect that that goes out to the rest of the world wherever they work. That might be in a community of interest in Viva Engage, or in a team that they're active in. That could be the all company feed in Teams, or it could just be specific teams for specific types of news. Or like the rest of the world and all of us, we're still in email, and that's still a great way to have reach and impact. So with a lot of reach and impact, you have lots of ways to disperse your news. We're centering on where do you start that, and how do communication sites work, and how do they function within the ecosystem. That little expansion of hub sites, home sites, and SharePoint app for in Teams, save that for a little bit later. That's our end cap, just to wrap it all up in terms of where and how you might architect a few things so that you can optimize how you bring and organize not only the messages together, but all of the things you're going to hear from the rest of the team around permissions and navigation and the types of news and audience targeting and all of that. So there are a lot of other products involved. They're the tiny little ones in the bottom right for amplification, for getting the word out in an automated fashion, for putting video in, and of course using our friend AI and Copilot. But really, the center of gravity of the landscape is SharePoint and its peers in Viva Teams and Outlook.
Awesome summary. We're going to hand it over to Patrick, and he's going to act as our definer of communication sites from the perspective of, well, what they are, but also from the perspective of the Sympraxis team. So Patrick, I'll let you take it away.
So one thing we always start with, obviously, is discussing team sites versus communication sites, and kind of what the difference is there. our team sites or our collaboration sites. That's where you've got your more permissioned content. It's where your departments work together, et cetera. That's not the focus of this. So we're really going to talk about the SharePoint side of things, the communication sites. Obviously, you can have SharePoint team sites as well, but again, we're focusing on what we like to refer to as the one-to-many communication sites. These are the sites that have information from each department that explains what the department does or what they're working on, information that is disseminated through the whole organization. It's those sites that the missing fork people can post on one site, the missing spoon people can post on another site, and it all comes together in one spot for everyone to see that it is time to bring the dishes in. Carol, we're going to beat this one like to a pulp.
Dead horse. I think we are.
The communication site's really built around news and communication. It's getting that information out there, whether it's your branding, any tools that you need to use. It's that public content. There's usually a consistency across the sites with your colors, as some organizations have added in fonts now with Brand Center. It's how your search experience is tied together with your permissions. What is accessible for people to see? Yeah. And then, of course, you can build your custom apps and things like that. You can set security to specific sites in SharePoint, so only those who should be seeing that information can, in terms of like audience targeting. Julie, did you have some more? I think you had more to say about custom.
I was going to address the custom apps ones because communication sites are often the ones we use when we build a custom solution using like SharePoint Framework or something like that, where we're wanting to extend the UX in a very specific way where it is a unit of functionality that can be wholly isolated in the application we're building, and we're building sort of these full page apps. Often we'll use a communication site to hone that custom app and deploy it in that one location so that it can be secured and targeted very specifically to the set of users that need to use that tool. And sometimes that might be everyone, but a lot of times, you'll have some bespoke solution that will stand up as a solution inside of a communication site set right on the homepage of that communication site. There's no other functionality of the communication site other than to act as that security boundary for that app. And you can also add, obviously, security into the app itself, but it's a good way to sort of scope access and visibility to the app by using a communication site. So it's just one more use case there. All right, so moving on to more on public content. Let me build this slide out.
I was going to say I copied this from a presentation I did on this and just realized that I didn't take the build out of it. Sorry about that, Julie.
No worries.
I think one of the things we always talk about is, our communication is only good as our foundation. So I wanted to just specifically talk about, how information architecture comes into play when we're talking about our public content, how that really helps us define that communication or that information we want to put out to everyone, whether it's our benefits guides, adding content types and metadata to those, lets people use search regardless of where they are on the internet or your portal, whatever word we want to use these days, to search for that information. Policies, because we have policy libraries with a content type. We can have policy centers that we build into most of our site, our intranets. That's just the word I'm going to use because it's the only one that's coming to mind at the moment. Because it's easier to have a policy center in one spot for people to search for everyone. They don't have to think about whether, is this a finance policy? Is this a human resources policy? Because we've added that information architecture there, it allows them to find that information wherever we are. How-to procedures, corporate or department news. Certainly we were talking about rolling up the news from different departments. You can also have a news site that is built for your organization. I think Anderson is going to talk about news in a few slides. But the other thing that I just wanted to mention in terms of the benefits here is audience targeting that information. So if you have M365 groups and security groups, you can audience target certain links. So just because you're sitting there as the admin looking at it and there's 500 items in your navigation, doesn't mean that that's what your users are going to see, because if they don't have access to it or you've audience targeted to it, then your finance people are seeing stuff that's built to them. Your IT folks are seeing stuff that's built to them. And it just helps keep that communication clean. It lowers the cognitive load of the users because they're only seeing what they're supposed to be seeing.
Yeah, great points about that limiting the scope of what people are seeing. It can be confusing when you're the admin and you can see everything and you're like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming, when you really have targeted stuff. It's especially difficult when you have targeted web parts, because then you see all of them maybe and you're like, whoa, which one's which? I often have that problem on setting up PMP verticals in PMP search pages that I build with the verticals. That's just so confusing. Anyway, all right, let's talk about, Patrick, keep going, thinking about the design and layout of our communication sites.
So this is kind of where the usability aspect comes into it. And the two areas I was kind of focusing on for this discussion is consistency in design, and then, of course, consistency in standards, which is actually one of the heuristics that Jacob Nielsen puts out there for how we should build our sites in terms of thinking about how users will actually use them and get the most information from them. And when it comes to design, we want to think of things like your heading use, making sure that you're using your styles, your H1s, your H2s, your H3s. Thinking about your visuals, making sure that if you're going to use an image, that it makes sense to the context on the content on the page. If someone is looking at a picture of a car, but the information is about your dental plan, that's not going to make much sense unless the caption is something about racing to get that root canal. And thinking contextually, how things are laid out on the page. So, in the example you can see here, we've got that in a couple of spots. We've got the quantitative versus qualitative research. Right next to it is your links to that information. So you've got the 5 qualitative research methods, and then the quantitative user research methodologies overview. So you're providing context by putting the extra material, that additional information, right next to it. The other way we've done that is banding. So that first overview section has a resources section. And because it's got a gray background, people assume that that information is tied together. They don't have to think about whether that is actually the case because we're providing that information for them. So that actually lowers their cognitive load. When it comes to consistency and standards, I always think about that at least 4 homepages of different sites that we have a very similar layout. That way users know what to expect. It's the same way that we build in our navigational elements with having a couple of layers of labels, grouping and silo information before we have our links, because it just helps them find that information. Writing in an F pattern is one that I think gets missed a lot. People, user research shows us people won't sit there and read the whole page. They'll scan it. And what reading an F pattern is they'll read the heads. So they're going to look at overview. Maybe they'll read that first section. Then they're going to look at quantitative versus qualitative research. I chose the wrong one to talk about for this. And then they're gonna skip that content, or maybe they'll read the link because it's a different color, and then they're going to see better practices. So they're hitting kind of items in an F shape. The other thing, particularly as we're rolling out more Copilot and we're seeing that being used more, is dynamic content at the top of the page. 2 quick thoughts about that. One is that's where the information that changes on your home pages. So that's where we put like our news or our quick links, those top items that we gather from user stories that people might be using. We keep them in a similar spot on every site, so people don't have to think about where to go for that information. It tends to be updated as things fall out of style and things like that. I forgot the other one that I was. Oh, with regards to AI and helping out Copilot, the other thing I've started building into my pages is a summary or overview section at the top of the page. Since Copilot goes in and reads the pages, having a brief summary at the top not only helps your users who are coming to the page to get an understanding of what's there, it actually helps Copilot direct people to the right location because that information is summarized. It doesn't have to go through the whole page to see what's there. So just a quick sentence with a couple of bullets or something to kind of summarize what's on the page at the top helps people who come to it, as well as our artificial intelligent folks who are trying to help us out.
All right. That is awesome content. We do have a Sympraxis disagreement going on in the chat, and so I believe that they should fight it out. Dan Tail asked, is the concept of above the fold content still a thing? Mark Anderson said yes. Derek said no.
I say
yes.
I say no.
I think we are actually agreeing because we both talked about information sent, right? I mean, if you have a content that doesn't look like there's anything down below, then you tend not to scroll. It's just human nature, right? If there's a line across the bottom, you think, oh, okay, I'm done. But like on this screenshot, better practices, there's obviously something more for me to read, so I'm going to read down. It is below the fold, and so that's okay as long as we let people understand that there's stuff down there. But you also, Derek, I think you agree that you want to have your more important stuff toward the top left of the page.
Right. I mean, I think that we're actually agreeing. Like you want to, the scent of information is the most important thing, and we want our content to be created in an inverted pyramid. So the most important stuff is at the top of the page. The least important stuff on the page is at the bottom. Why? Because of the F pattern that Patrick was talking about. The users are going to scan. They're not going to get all the way to the bottom of the page, right? So you want your most important information to be in the top and have it be visible above the fold. However, making sure that it is everything that's needs to be there is above the fold and building pages that are just one screen tall, that's not a thing anymore. That was something we talked about in the 2000s about, page layout and page design, but that's been disproven over the years.
And sometimes having that table of contents at the top, those little anchor links, just helps give you that sense too that there's something further down on the page.
I was just going to mention that, Carrie. Yeah, I think in some ways I understand what you're saying, Derek. I think it is about that set of information, but it's making sure that key information, that dynamic, that important information is at the top above the fold. That's where the most pertinent information is. And that could be a summary and a TOC, for Carrie's point, right? Like it could be providing that sense that there's more on the page, but it certainly is making sure that regardless of what people are seeing it on, they're going to scroll and hopefully find their answer. Actually, that brings up a good thing that a tidbit that I always do too, which is I never put contact us at the top of the page. So when you're building a page and it has the little name thing up there, I always remove that, never put a name in there. I'll add a contact at the bottom of the page saying, reach out with questions, contact this person, and put in the people web part at the bottom with the hopes that they'll actually scan the page, find their answer, and you'll never hear from them. So that's just a fun little tip.
Right.
But that's good, right? Because we never hear from them. No.
So I can tell you as a user of like commercial sites, I hate that. But for business sites, it might be a better thing. But I'm always hoping that contact thing's at the top because that's what I go to the page for. But yeah.
It depends on the page. If it's a contact us page, then certainly that information is there. But I also try to contextualize that too. So if you have a specific question about, your 401k, you're contacting this person. If you have a specific question about your other benefits, you're contacting this person. So it's still contextualizing the contact us. So you're not going through the daisy chain of talking to this person, to that person, to that person.
Which we all hate. It's like
yes,
getting lost in the phone directory thing. All right, Mark Anderson, how do we keep things fresh?
Okay.
That does not mean your attitude. You're already. Winning.
I totally got this wrong. This slide is not what I thought. All right,
Todd is like, finally, she's not picking on me.
Yeah,
Oh, just wait,
I was
Todd.
thinking that exact thing. I'm like,
Just
yeah, you go, girl. Get him.
So
I don't ever want to hear
I'm
Todd
just
say
gonna-
you
I'm gonna
go
start
girl
talking.
again.
Yeah, we can have that as a ringtone for sure. You go, girl. Oh, it's Todd calling.
Are we ready?
Sorry, Mark.
Okay. So communication sites have home pages. The home site, which is usually a communication site, has a home page. So some of this stuff applies to the home page itself, but a lot of it also applies to the rest of the pages in these communication sites that you build. So ideally, the home page isn't something that you edit constantly because you make it as dynamic as possible. You want content to sort of bubble up from other places. That's especially true of the home page of the home site. It's usually the landing page of your intranet. You shouldn't be editing it very often because content should be coming from other places. And you want to try to apply that thinking within a communication site as well. For example, if you have a document library that you're adding and subtracting content to, don't build buttons that go straight to individual documents. Use something dynamic that's going to show those documents instead. Could be a documents web part, document library web part, for example. So always think about where should something be dynamic rather than something I have to edit all the time, because you won't do it enough and you'll end up with stale content. Stale is the opposite of fresh. You'll want to be developing your new content for communication sites, generally off-piste if you're a skier, or somewhere else if you're just another person. So oftentimes you build that content in team sites. You know, if you're in the HR department, you're building those new policies, you're building the new benefits package, you're building, you know, the things that people will need to consume on your communication site in your team sites. You don't want to try to build where you're going to display things. Communication sites are that showroom. You're showing the end result of those processes. So you want only completed content there. And you want to make sure that you don't have duplicates or, you know, like a file that's called benefits package 2012, the benefits package 2013, because those are wrong as soon as we switch years. So make sure that all the content that's in your communication site is actually still valid. Build on user stories. A lot of the time when we're working with clients, it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it still does happen. Somebody will say, well, the VP says that we need a picture of him on the front page and we need to have this mission statement and stuff. That's not what people come to your communication site for, unless they're brand new to the organization, and then they never want to see it again. So think about putting that content somewhere else. Focus on those user stories. Why are people coming to our site? What can we help them solve on their own so that they don't have to call us all the time or send us an email all the time? Think about self-service. Think about the kinds of problems people are trying to solve. And some research talking to your users is, oh my goodness, a good idea. You know, you don't just build these sites in a vacuum. And then finally, you want to use web parts for their actual purpose. I don't know that a lot of people spend time looking through that briefcase of what web parts are available and thinking about how they fit together. News web parts are a great way to inform people about things that are happening in your organization, but it's temporal. You know, it's meant to be something that's important today, less important tomorrow, less important the day after, but we keep them around because the history is important if somebody's new again. Quick links ought to be things that people need to get to quickly or directly. Sue Hanley hates the word quick link, the phrase quick links. So I agree with her. You know, useful links, well, why would we give you non-useful links? Well, if you call it useful links, it will help you remember that they should be useful. They shouldn't be things like pictures of my cat. Call to action web parts are really nice to bring something into a page that is there for a period of time that you want people to actually do something about. It's just a button with an image behind it usually. But, open enrollment time, or we want you to sign up for the company party, or what are your dietary restrictions, or whatever it is, something you want somebody to do for a period of time. You add those to the page and then you take them away when that action is no longer pressing. People web parts are incredibly powerful and people don't use them enough. By adding people to the people web parts, you get the full contact card for the people who you've added. So when you're building a directory of people who work in a department, for example, don't do that in text on a page. Do it using the people web part and adding each individual person. The different formats even allow you to add additional text that's not in their profile. And then finally, one that I think people don't use enough is page properties. You all are using content types. You all have wonderful metadata on all of your content, of course. So if you've got metadata on your pages, you can display that metadata right in the page, which helps people sort of get that context. This is a policy, or this is about the European office, or whatever it is that you've used for metadata. So just some thoughts there about how you can devise fresh content and also keep it fresh. And don't forget to review things as they get older.
Awesome summary. All right, back to Mr. Cashman to finish us up.
Yeah, I love that concept of.
Sorry, Mark.
No, it's okay. It's really just an end cap of a thought, and I love the concept of a fresh intranet, because it is what you want people to do, to want to come back and have reason to. And that the intranet is never finished is a good thing, because business growth, new information, things that people don't understand, you can clarify and help them. And the end cap thought here is that as you think of a communication site, there are growth spurts it can go through on the right-hand side. You can take a communication site and up-level it to a hub site. So you have a more parent level for an organized set of sites that might have contribution of their own content as it goes up to the hub. That could be news, that could be, the look and feel. And you make that your home site, that could be putting a stake in the ground. This is the most parent level that we want you to pay attention to for the concepts of things that apply to more or most people. And then there's this thing that used to be called Viva Connections. It's now called the SharePoint app in Teams. So it doesn't mean to say that they're all dependent on each other. You can certainly go straight from a communication site to a SharePoint app in Teams. But you can also take the liberty of making something a little bit more special, a little bit more center, a little bit more above the fold. And as we kind of just center the attention, the concepts that we're talking about, and I think the rest of the team, if I can speak for them for a second, words like the internet, portal, employee experience, even if that caught on and kind of became something that people thought about, it all just means a center of gravity of where we all can have a conversation, where I'm going to share one thing that's important to, I think, a lot of people, and then I want to engage with them. And if I start getting engagement that tells me you're posting all the wrong stuff, central comms person, then I should change that, and I should rearrange things, and of course get rid of old content. So the other part of messaging that I thought was a good one, because it just sort of rolls off the tongue, even if it makes people cringe, is in the flow of your work and flow of the conversation, meet people where they are. And there are a lot of tools that can build off of the intranet, with the center of gravity being coming from a communication site, that meets people where they're at and helps them do all the things that we've already talked about. Find people, find resources, fill out forms, submit their time, all of that good stuff. And if it's done right, not only is it fresh and new and well organized and people can find what they're looking for, you get in, you get what you need, and then you get out. And that's a good sign of a good, well thought of, well designed, well maintained intranet.
Awesome summary. And I've been making the mistake of giving Todd slides, so I'm just going to let him tell you about this one command, and then we're going to move on to resources.
Everybody's been loving.
No, it's gone.
Almost.
And so we have all these resources for you. We had some questions in the chat about Nielsen Norman design articles. And so there's a couple there. There was one more put in the chat. And then to summarize, August 5th is coming up, and we have a guest on August 5th. We're going to do SharePoint Brand Center design and using templates. And we have the estimable Stefan Bauer joining us, who is, as I always tell people, my right and left hand for developing custom solutions, but he happens to be very deeply understand SharePoint Brand Center design and using those templates. So he will be joining us for that episode. In the meantime, myself, Derek, Patrick, and Mark Cashman will be in Seattle. Well, Mark's always in Seattle, but we'll all be in Seattle too.
I went down to the convention center today and I was a little early. So.
Oh, well, there it is. So we'll be there for TechCon 365 Seattle. That's August 24th through 28th. We have a discount if you'd like to join us. Sympraxis 200 gets you $200 off. And then Collab Days New England. The call for sponsors is still open. We really could use a little extra help. So if you or your organization or an organization you know would like to help us out with that, we would be very grateful. But meanwhile, registration is open. It is free to everyone. Friday, October 16th in Burlington, Mass. It is an in-person event only, but we would love to see you there. Fall in New England is lovely. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.